Hello, listeners. Just want to give you a heads up. Today's episode is a wonderful conversation with my good friend Lexi. For any parents out there that are listening, or anyone in general who has a problem with strong language, I will let you know that near the end of this conversation, there does get a little bit of explicit language. However, the conversation itself is wonderful, and I highly suggest you guys give it a good listen. Thank you for joining us, and welcome to I.P.A. Sessions. Welcome to I.P.A. Sessions. I'm your host, Kay Jacob. And no, that's not I.P.A. as in beer, although I do like a good IPA. Hopefully in the future, maybe I can get some IPA sponsors. That would be great. But this is more a focus on inspirations for practical applications in the entertainment medium. Each episode, I'm going to introduce you guys to independent artists that are out there creating work and just living their dreams. The goal of this show is to provide that inspiration, if you're an independent artist, to know that you can make it out there too and that you can do it as well. Each episode will be uniquely different. We'll focus on many aspects of the entertainment medium, but everyone is 100% authentic, independent artists. Joining me today, I have a good friend of mine, someone that you guys might recognize from a previous podcast we did together called the Three Deemers Podcast. She is now a co-host on Cinema Demori, and she's going to tell us what it's like to be a host of a podcast and how to go about making that podcast. So today is a special episode because it's my dear friend Lexi joining us. Lexi, say hi and introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Lexi. What more do you want from me?
Tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, we worked together on a previous podcast, and we're kind of doing something different for ourselves. And for those that don't know you, just tell us a little bit more about you.
It's funny because I actually hate talking about myself.
I know.
I am a 39-year-old trans woman who is a co-host on Cinema Demore, which is a podcast about film. It seems to cover all aspects of film, so it's not focused down to one specific thing. Okay. The show that we did before was the Three Deemers Podcast. That was a show that was specifically focused on film remakes. And I went that direction instead of just talking about film by itself because I wanted to create something that would stick out from the billions of podcasts hosted by stale white guys who just want to give their opinions.
Right.
So I was trying to come up with something to put me into the film scape, but still push me out in front of everybody else and make it stand out. And so I knew that if I tried to do it by myself, because it was something I tried to figure out for years on my own, and I was just like, it's never going to work with just me because my opinions are too strong. And I need someone who can counter that. So that's why I went to you, is because I needed someone who was able to go more in a positive direction than me with a lot of things. You tend to like a lot more than I do.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, Lexi and I are both avid fans of film and movies. We especially love the horror genre. Lexi's a big car buff. I'm a big lover of trashy movies. Therefore, we made a perfect fit for a show like that.
Everything worked really well. The issues with it really were promotion. We didn't promote ourselves as much as we could have. I think I know what I'm doing with social media stuff, but then I also don't have time to promote on social media as much as I do. And then with the new show that I'm on too, I think that they need more social media promotion as well. But like on that one too, like it's very time consuming to give yourself the level, like the time that's necessary for the amount of social media promotion. Like you need to be working your job and doing it at the same time constantly throughout the day. And that's just one side of it that's really hard for me. Like I have so much going on in my life.
Yeah, there's a lot happening everywhere. Our show that we did together is in a current hiatus. We can talk about that if you want. If you have any future plans for it, we can discuss that now. If you want, I can also, because you brought up the why you do podcasting, that's going to be my next question is the why, and then we'll get more into the how. Which direction would you like to go first?
Well, I feel like going back to like the Three Deemers stuff and the podcast stuff, I can just kind of expand on that. So when I started doing it, Justin was not to shit on you, but Justin was the first person I wanted to work with.
Of Cinema Demori, correct?
Yes, of Cinema Demore, the host of that. And I was someone who worked with him in Pennsylvania. I knew him like personally, but we were more like online friends. And he's apprehensive about working people, I guess he just doesn't have a lot of familiarity with. So when he started his podcast like 5 years ago, I was trying to get in on it and work with him, but he already had like a set group of people. So I was like, fuck, the person that I want to work with has kind of gone off and started their own thing. Cause I really felt like me and Justin, when we would chat online, we had really good back and forth, and he gives intelligent answers. So I needed someone who was going to give me that sort of whatever, not I want to say high level, but that kind of like response of not, well, I don't like it. I don't need that. I don't like it. I don't need that. It's like I wanted someone who was going to be able to like play off of me. So
why don't you like it?
yeah. So I needed that from the person. And I went through like a lot of people. And like just people that I knew, people that were like with me around working. When I was in Rocky, there were people that were always approaching me. I had people here and there, but nothing ever felt right. And then when the pandemic happened, it was like, I've got to start doing something, anything. And that's why I reached out to you. It wasn't because you were a last choice, but it was rather that I had rekindled talking to you.
Yeah. We reconnected during the pandemic. Yeah.
And then I was like, let's try this and see where this one goes. And there was a lot of bumps in the road at first. And I genuinely was not happy working with Justin. And I don't want to be mean to him because it's not his fault, but it wasn't going the way I wanted it to go. It wasn't the flow that I needed. And so we made adjustments there. And then we brought Rachel on. Rachel was fine. She was able to fill that hole better than Justin and give some different feedback just because she has a different perspective on things, but she wasn't necessarily what I wanted either.
And you're talking about different hosts that we had on Three Dreamers.
Yeah.
Justin was one of our original hosts of the Three Dreamers, and then Rachel came in as another host. Yeah.
Because the whole concept was with the Three Dreamers, the whole reason that we called it Three Dreamers, which I have to say, I stand by. I think it was a terrible name. I think it really was part of the reason why we didn't see further success was because it was too complicated of a name to market. I didn't hate it necessarily, and we pushed forward on it, but like I really think that was something that was hurting our sellability was just because it was so hard to understand it. It was hard to make them like not a mascot, but like a logo around it and all that stuff, because it was like 3D, and it's like 3D is a thing. So it's like you can go and steal someone else's shit, or you can try to figure out how to work this and not have it play into that. So it was really complicated in that regard. And then once we got going with it and figuring that side of it out, then we brought her in, and then we started kind of finding our place. And when we started finding our place with the themes and the months and pushing that way, and then bringing the guest host on. Oh, I meant to say the reason we called it 3 Demers was because instead of having two people, I figured that if it was just me and Jacob, that it would just be me and him going back and forth.
We'd never have a decisive winner. Yeah.
Right. And it wouldn't even be about deciding a winner or any of that. It would just be two people going back and forth kind of thing. And I was like, you need a third person, not just for the sake of myself, but like if you're really trying to make like a decision about which is the better of the two, which was the whole goal of our show, was to say, was the remake worth making? Was it better than the original? That sort of thing.
Yeah.
You need to have somebody else there to be able to weigh the sides. So we brought a third person on in that regard to be able to lopside it. So it was always like two would go one way or all three would go one way, but there was always that option of two to one. And that was what was made that formula work better, was the 2 to 1 rather than the two people just having a conversation. I was trying, like I said, it was all going back to trying to figure out ways to stand out amongst all the people that were doing this and do it in a way that you don't sound like an idiot, because like no matter what your opinion is, it's like if more people lean this way than the other, then the general consensus is more in this direction. And so we tried really hard to find hosts who were more grounded in reality, but also had knowledge. Didn't need to have necessarily a background, but just an understanding of and a care for. Because if you're going to say you like the original, more than the remake, why? So you got to have a little bit of, I just liked it. It's like, it was okay. It's a little different like when we had Brian on, who didn't know about the whatever because he already had the background. So it was like,
it's a completely new genre for him. Yeah.
But still he has knowledge to be able to back up. So we were doing a good job. We were getting places with that. It was a lot of work, and with the scheduling that we were on and the fact that we were covering remakes, if the film's remake had more than one, then that's 3 to potentially 5 films you're watching.
Yeah.
And some of the films that we would be watching would have 5 things. If each one of those is 2 hours a piece, just say that's, 6 hours right there. Even if each one is like an hour and a half, that's still 3 to 4 hours you have to sacrifice to watching these two movies, as opposed to like the show I'm on right now. I watch one movie and I go about my business. One movie can take like an hour to like 3 hours, depending on the film and who makes it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But like for this, I mean, when we did A Star Is Born,
Was that 4 movies?
it was 4 movies, and everyone just got longer and longer. And like, I have a tendency of watching them in a row instead of just watching them, because I'm trying to like compare and contrast right through.
Yeah.
What that ends up doing is
Takes the wind out of the sails.
it burns you out,
Yeah.
and you end up like, now like going back to A Star Is Born, I'm now finding appreciation for the Bradley Cooper one. I'm finding appreciation for the film as a standalone film on its own. But when I had to watch 4 of them together and make a comparison, by the end of it, I was like, the one that I really found that stood out for me that I enjoyed the most was, the whatever one I picked in the early.
Original.
Yeah. And I was like, I didn't care for it in the end of the day. It was just that after everything I saw, I just kind of think that this was whatever. And it's like, but that's not really necessarily where I'm at. So it was like, we did that for over 2 years. It was almost 3 years. And with how that viewing experience goes, I didn't have time for other things, like my own wants and desires to watch and what have you. And if I squeezed it in, all I'd be doing is watching movies all day, which during the pandemic was okay. But like, it wasn't okay when I started working and I started going to therapy twice a week and going to my other therapist for us and going to my group therapy for my trans meetings and my, electrolysis sessions.
Yeah. I mean, you're literally going through a lot of transitioning right now in life. It's hard to find that time.
It's like all I do is watch a movie, work, deal with myself, and then edit. And editing takes anywhere on my end from like 8 to 10 hours, depending on my edit and what I'm going through and what I had to do. And so with how much editing was involved and how much time consumption was involved, I completely understand YouTube burnout. I understand all those like, influencer burnouts, things like that. Like, to have this go and also have to work another job and all that kind of stuff, like, you really do need to monetize to be able to make this like functional and fruitile. So you started working and got your promotion, and that made it harder on me because I had to up my ante, because you did a lot of the legwork, you did a lot of the editing, and you did like the social, or not, you did the photos. And so you took up a lot of the slack that was necessary on me getting things done. And so it made my life a lot easier when you did the photos and I could just throw them on social media when they were ready. And it made my life a lot easier when you edited, and then I could just throw it into Anchor and get it ready to upload, and then that was it, kind of thing. So where it all started kind of like falling apart was just like when it started becoming too much for me alone to do, because I didn't have help from other sources.
So it's not easy. It's not easy at all to do this that we enjoy doing. It's really tough, is what you're saying. It's a lot of time consumption. There is finances, if you have finances. I think we were smart enough to find a way to go about it, to do what we could without any type of financial aid, but there were some benefits here and there that we tried to work for. But
there were always expenses. I mean, we had to buy equipment.
We did have to buy equipment. We invested our own money. I don't think we made any money.
No, we made $13 total. I checked the Anchor today. So
there you go.
In that time period, we made $13. I mean, the cost of renting some of these movies on Amazon, some of these movies were just not available. I mean, there were also some of them that were so unavailable that we would have to find them through like pirated or oddly sourced sites.
We got lucky on a few that we covered that thankfully we just happen to own out of print copies.
Yeah.
Like we could cover it because we had copies to watch them that we just got lucky with, or YouTube rabbit holes that had a somewhat decent full length video in there.
What do you think is the reason that the podcast stopped after a certain period of time?
Well, it does come down to your own personal availability to be able to do it. I think we're both passionate and we were both driven to do the project. And look, to leave this on a good note too, as we discuss, thank you, Lexi, for the why you do podcasting and the hosting and the how of it. This is the stuff that I wanted to get into for each artists that I interview, because it's not easy what we try and do. Specifically for this, we're talking about podcasting, and time is it takes a lot of your time. And then once you spend about, an hour recording with someone, you have to spend at least another 8 to 10 if you do a straight sit down editing session to just clean it up and make it sound good and put it out there. We like to add a little music to it. We like to put little commercial breaks in there. We did anchor plugs to try and help get our stuff promoted and maybe try and make a little cent on the dollar kind of deals. We did our best to present it professionally, and you have to do a lot of that work. And then, of course, our lives outside of the podcast, we're getting busy. I had my promotion at work. I started working a lot more. You finally started getting more work, and it's just our finding our guests and the people we need to be available. It becomes a.
Never had problems with guests. I don't think we ever had problems with guests. Someone always wanted to be on our show.
They did. It was just working out the availability and the times and all that.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of planning, and that helps with it. I don't think that the show itself is quite over. I know that we're kind of in a hiatus mode, and I know that you do possibly have plans to want to do something in the future with it. And I'm happy to see where that goes, and happy to be a part of continuing making sure that happens. I know you want a name change and things like that.
The thing with it on my end is that once it fell into my hands by myself, and I started looking at the help that I had that was around me and the people that were willing and the people that weren't willing. The people that were willing were there, but needed a lot from me. And I did not have the mental energy or time to find that to give them. And then the other one would offer support, but then not provide the support that they said they would offer. And when I looked at everything with you gone for the moment, and me looking at having to take on as much as I would to keep it going and sustain it was going to push me into a spot where I knew I was headed for burnout. And so I think the best option that I could think of at that moment, because it was like, I don't want to stop podcasting. This has become very important to me, and this is something that I've needed to do for years, and it's something that I needed to talk about and get out there, was the discussions of film, because I'm tired of having these discussions and not. So it's like I had a medium, and it was like, just go listen to this and you can hear my fucking opinions, and I don't have to sit and tell you for hours all this kind of stuff. Like, it was really important to me, and my knowledge is really good, and so it's something that I just want to keep talking about. But I was like, what do I do in this situation? And I was like, I can keep moving forward and stressing myself out and overworking myself and having literally no time. Or I can talk to Justin and see if he'll let me co-host on his show. And he was like, yeah, absolutely. Like, no question. It wasn't even a debate. And so it was like I said, it was bittersweet, because it was like I full circled through this like treacherous kind of path of like starting on my own and building to working to something and building something with you. And then it just kind of like halts immediately. But then I get to go work with the person who, after all of this, was someone who I wanted to work with for like 5 years. And now I'm on their show, and I'm like, I think we have some work to do.
And it's funny that you say it like that, because in all honesty, that's how it happens sometimes within the entertainment business, within just the independent artistry that we try and perform. It works like that sometimes. You're hot and you're cold.
I don't know if I would have the ability to tell him what I think he needs to fix and doesn't need to fix without doing this on our own, like with us.
Yeah, you probably wouldn't have something really great to bring to the table for him to see what you can offer as a co-host. Now, I know we talked about the podcast and why you got into it, and thank you for telling us all about the why. But now you're getting into another podcast show, so now you get to really focus on your passion, which is talking. It's something I know you love doing, as long as it's not about yourself. But you get to continue being a co-host, and you get to continue giving your advice on movies. And how's that going for you right now? How do you enjoy doing that? Is it the break that you needed after all, and it's helping you form some more creative stuff?
I'm not really watching movies this year, which is weird for me, because it's like I'm just busy, and I just don't find I have time for it. And I find that when I do have time, that I spent a lot of time watching YouTube content. Like, it's literally, I just watch, like, you want to know about YouTube drama? I can tell you all kinds of shit about YouTube drama, because it's so easy to put on and ignore. So I can put it on and go about my business and deal with what I'm dealing with or whatever. And so that's what's always on. I never really have time to like focus the way I want to focus. But getting to do Justin's show, like, you have no idea how much shit we were watching. Like you have no idea. Like unless you go in and listen to our show was like, oh God, they made us watch this, and it was like I said to Justin when we started doing it, I was like, I spent 2.5 years crawling around in a fucking sewer pipe with you, digging around and like going, ooh, look what I found. And you're like, well, I found this turd down here. And we just would be like, okay. And
Who had the shiniest turd? It was awesome.
Justin was like up above us up on this hill in like this like fancy house eating caviar. Like, look at those two down there. And I'm like, you know what? Can I come up there with you guys? And they're like, sure, come on up. And I'm like, later. You can keep and that's the way it kind of feels. But like being forced to watch Wes Anderson movies, that was the first director that I got in on. And they made me watch the Oscars, which I don't watch that shit at all. I do not watch the Oscars. Like that is not something. And he's like, oh, well, we do an Oscar thing. And I was like, yeah, you're a film show. That makes sense. So then I watched the Oscars. So I got to watch the slap live, which I guess that's part of culture.
Yeah, the Will Smith slap.
Yeah, I saw the Will Smith slap. But like, I was not very good for that. Like I've watched none of the. I think the only movies we watched on that were ones that we covered on the show. So I was like, well, I knew West Side. I was like, West Side Story. That one I definitely know. And I think there was like, Dune. Dune was the other one that was up for all kinds of them. So it was like Dune and West Side were the only two that I knew.
on our previous podcast.
Right. Yeah. So it was like if we hadn't covered it on our show, I basically never saw it and didn't know anything about it unless it was like some sort of trash movie that I wanted to see. Yeah. So now I'm in this place where like I'm watching film again, and it's not like remake films, which the thing about the remake stuff was that remake culture surrounds pop culture. And so typically the sort of films that people come in to remake tend to be more pop culture, popcorn type movies, or movies that like they just seem to remake every 20 years or so, or something like that.
Or Marvel.
Right. So to come into a show and watch films that you know are not going to get remade, and that they're like one and dones, and they're more like film oriented. Like when he said we're doing Wes Anderson, I was like, I don't think I dislike a single Wes Anderson movie. Like, I don't think there's one movie from him that I have ever disliked. And I was like, even the ones that I'm not the biggest into, they're still really good movies. Like, there's nothing bad to say about this person. And it was really refreshing to spend a month watching Wes Anderson movies, like these light, well done movies that don't have a terrible remake coming up after it and a terrible whatever coming after it.
It sounds like you have a better outlook on everything now that you're watching, more films that you can enjoy, that you're not feeling forced to have to cover.
I'm excited to make them go down my rabbit hole because they watch a lot of directors like
highbrow.
I know, yeah. Well, I wouldn't say highbrow. One of Justin's favorite directors is Quentin Tarantino, so he's definitely not into necessarily highbrow, and he has a lot of knowledge in horror and stuff.
For those of you who don't know, Justin will be joining us in an episode down the road, and he is my kaiju brother. We love our big monster movies, so he does have just as great taste in trashy films as he does in high class films.
We have a lot that we agree on, me and him. Like, I would not say that
he's an agreeable and likable guy.
We're not really on the opposite sides, but he'll take a much more positive approach to things than I do. But it's nice to feel that rekindling of film and be able to talk about film in a different way. But then there are a lot of things that like I do miss. Like, I do miss hosting. I was good at hosting. I'm good at driving the conversation. I find that even during our show now that I still ask driving questions because I'm just so used to it. Like, I'm like, Chuck, what do you think the future is for this person, or that kind of stuff? So it's just, I just don't have that ability to stop.
No, it's okay. It's part of why I wanted you on as my first guest, not just because of our history together, but because I knew you could help get my show started. I'm trying to figure it all out. I'm trying to find my new pathway here, my new direction, and I'm trying to take lead and notes from how you host it. So it is fun being in the driver's seat and having you on. And I don't think of it so much as a host as it's kind of just an interviewee type situation. But what I love is that, you know, you have this ability to drive the conversation. You know, I had my list here because I wanted to get in some in-depth conversation about, you know, the why and the how. And without having to ask these questions, you went right into it. You told us why you do this. You told us how you went about doing this. You know, I wanted to ask you about, you know, promoting the show and how you get products out there. You know, you mentioned the social media. You talked about how we try to use Anchor to get these things. You know, I wanted to know, you know, anything discouraging, you know, hard realities you had to face, and you gave us that without me having to ask these questions. So I really appreciate that you do have this ability to host a show if you want, and without me having to ask questions, you've been able to carry this conversation for me, and I absolutely love that. I do have one question, though, I want to ask you. What is the most valuable takeaway that you've learned from your experience overall?
Don't work with your loved ones.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. And you know, my other question is, because again, I want to try and apply questions out there to people who are listening, that may feel similar, that may want to start a podcast of their own. You know, we mentioned that we want to be specific with the podcast that we started. That it was you, actually, because you love movies and you want to talk about movies. But if you look out there, there's a million different movie themed podcasts.
Yeah.
I mean, just like with what I'm doing as a how to, there's a bunch of those out there as well. That's why my main goal to try and make this different is I want to focus on the independent artists. I haven't really seen that many podcasts that do interviews and try and push and promote other artists' work. And I want it to be a platform where they get to speak. And that's why I have you here today to push Cinema d'Amore, talk about Three Deemers, possible artwork coming up in the future that you're planning on doing. And I just want to know, what's your drive? You know, you explained how tough this can be. You explained the time consumption and the feeling of burned out, but you kept pushing through. So what is it that drives you?
This is a weird question. I don't have kids, and I don't have anyone like in my life. Like I have Rachel, my fiance, and you know, you're in my life. Like,
Of course.
you're important to me, but it's not like that. Like, your friends are one thing, but like, I'm not someone who wants to die and leave nothing behind. And I get really sad, and I go into like a weird state of depression when I think about how much of my life I've spent collecting. Like, I've got all these toys and all these movies and all these things around me, and to me, they hold so much importance and so much value. And when I'm dead, I don't have anybody who's going to take them or inherit them, or because everybody I know is going to be dead too. And it's like, you know, all those things that you care about are going to end up in an estate somewhere, and no one's going to give a fuck. Like, oh, Lexi's pile of, you know, laser discs and fucking, you know, it's like no one gives a shit. No one gives a shit
Encyclopedia
about
of cars.
your Harmony Korine films. Like no one cares about your DVDs. No one cares about that. In the same way, like no one cares about yours, but you got a kid. I know he's not by birth, but like he's your kid, and so it's like as long as you maintain that relationship and have that, he will pass down he will pass you on.
Yeah.
And so I don't have that. So
I adopted one. It was great.
I mean, I had kids for a minute, but I don't anymore. But so there's no one to pass that legacy on, and so it's like you have to build your own legacy if you want to be remembered. And so even though I'm 39 years old and I have a lot of depression and I have a lot of like times in my life where I shut down and things like that, at the end of the day, there's always something in me that pushes me to try desperately to find that success. And so I desperately want to do comedy. I desperately want to host things. I desperately want to act and put myself out there and share my thoughts with the world, because on the other side of that coin too, anything of importance that you have to say has no relevance to anybody when it comes to saying it to someone out in the world. You can say it to that one person and they might listen or they might not. And that's the end of the story with that. And maybe they'll pass your information on and maybe they won't. But if you try to talk to a group of people and say your thoughts and the group isn't here with it, you're not going to win that conversation. However, if you're a celebrity and you have a platform, now you have a listener base. They're going to listen to half of what you say, and the other half is going to be angry. And the angry half is going to put you out in the world because they're going to talk about how this person is saying this, and the other half is going to agree with you, and they're going to say this, and that's going to start a conversation. And that's the end goal of what I want, is I want to be heard. I don't want people to ignore me. I have things to say, and I think the things I have to say are very important and have value to the world. And if it means that I have to tell a bunch of bad jokes and talk about movies and do that kind of stuff, which I like doing all that stuff. That's
Yeah.
who I am. But my end goal is to get to talking about the bigger issues and talking about the world and leaving my impression on the world so that when I'm gone, people will still, I don't want to be fucking Elvis, but give me at least another 10 years after I'm gone. Look at all the perks they did. Look at all I want. Like, where's my 10-minute video of me talking shit about people on the internet? I want that video.
I mean, you do have a lot to say, and you do have something to say. And what I really enjoyed and loved the most about our friendship and our show that we did together is that I do want to continue down the road in the future, doing some more work like that. I know that I'll be joining you guys from time to time on Cinema Demore, as well as we'll have Justin on here, and I'll have many other amazing independent artists that work within the podcast medium that I'm sure you guys would love to connect with and work together to help promote one another. And one of the best things that I learned doing doing our show together for Three Demers was that if I love a movie and it's trashy or it's bad and I have to defend that, if I can't defend what is good about a bad trashy movie, then obviously it's not that good, other than the fact that I have to accept that it's just something I like.
It took forever to knock that into you. It took like
I know.
half a year to knock that shit into you.
Well, it got to a point where I had to recognize, like, okay, I can't defend this. It's trash and it's bad. But for some reason, I like it. And that's okay that I like it. But I have to admit, it's not good. And I really liked that was something I learned. And you're right. It took a while to hammer that into me. So my last question for you is, what is something unexpected that you've had to deal with while working on one of your projects? Something that maybe you learned in the moment, something that was completely new to you.
God, I can't even answer that. I don't know. I work in a weird way. I can't, like, okay, you were asking about hosts, not to go completely off your question, but like, hosting is not something that anybody can do. So anybody who thinks that they can host something, pay attention to your interactions with people in the world. Pay attention to how you're able to hold a room. Pay attention to how you converse with people. Because the thing is that a good host has to be able to naturally control the room, control the flow, control the tempo and everything that's moving. Keep it going constantly. Keep having kind of conversation going constantly. You can't have any dead air. It's not just about radio. It's the same with television. Like, you can't just like stand there and not do anything.
Editing can only fix so much.
And then you have to build trust. And if the people trust you, then they'll be able to talk to you. Howard Stern, you don't have to like Howard Stern. There are some controversial points about Howard Stern. But Howard Stern is hands down the single greatest interviewer to ever live. There is no greater interviewer on the planet than Howard Stern. Howard Stern can get anybody to talk about anything. And anybody who knows that they're going on Howard Stern's show knows goddamn well he's going to make them talk about some shit that they are absolutely adamant about not talking about. Even if their PR agent came in and said, don't ask him about X, Howard Stern will immediately ask them about X.
Yep.
But Howard Stern has earned that ability, that right. He has done it through years of showing his guests that he is trustworthy, that he is someone you can talk to, that his show is all over the world, but he is not going to belittle you on his show and make you feel small. He is going to give you a platform and allow you to speak about it however you want. And that is great hosting, is the ability to let everybody flow and do their own thing, still be in the middle of it, still be the center of attention, and not make yourself the center of attention. It's very hard.
Yeah.
But if you are that kind of person, it just happens naturally. And that's all it is. Like, I didn't choose hosting. Hosting chose me. Like,
where's that t-shirt?
like, I will but like, I mean, like, when we went into the show, if I had let one of you guys take over, I guarantee you that after 2 episodes, I would have said, I'm going to start hosting. Because I would have listened to how you guys flow, and I would have been like, this is not going to work. We have to, what have you. And so
we did actually. We tried in one episode to let me take the lead when we covered The Wicker Man, and it was horrible. I was like, I don't like this. I can't do this. And then I think
yeah.
after that, you just did every episode, which was great because it helped us find our roles within the show. It made me realize I'm a co-host. I'm a better sidekick, and I really love being a sidekick on a podcast. That was fun.
And you're on the other side of that coin, you're very good at that. I knew that you were going to reciprocate when I started talking to you and weren't just going to give me one-line answers. On the other side of the coin, sometimes you don't shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
So like you need to understand the boundary between when to shut the fuck up and when to let it keep going, because sometimes you'll keep going and repeat, and then you'll say the same thing 3 times, and it's like it doesn't matter at this point. You've said it, you've taken 15 minutes of airtime and said the same thing 3 times, and it's like that's not yelling at you, but it's
it's something that you learn through doing the show, and I'm not the
Right.
only one. And each of our guests have been unique in that way, and it's something you learn about yourself as you get into a podcast, which is something good to know for those who are listening that want to do a podcast. That you got to watch yourself, and you've got to be able to critique yourself and accept these things about you and how you can better yourself. That's exactly what Lexi has been doing as well.
And I'm better at off the hip. I'm always like, I don't write anything down. Everything I do comes directly off the head. When we're about to like start that whole intro, that just comes right out of my mouth. It's conditioned into me, and my introductions and the way that they flow, they're just there. That's not scripted. That's just who I am. That's what I do. And I've never scripted anything in an episode other than the notes. Those are the only things.
Well, you got to have your facts. Yeah.
Well, but all my guests would come in with notes, and I'd laugh at them. I'm like, I didn't need no fucking notes. And I'm like, you know why you don't need any notes? Because when I ask you questions, those notes are going to become irrelevant.
Yep, that usually does.
And that's what it comes down to, is that everybody will write something down, and by the end of it, they won't have used any of it because the direction will have been driven into this specific way. I know what I want. So I do force the conversation. Sometimes it's hard. I've had episodes where I've given up. I've had stuff where I'm like, I'm fucking done. They're not listening. I can't drive this boat tonight. I'm just going to fucking step back and see where it goes. And it only happened like 2 or 3 times total.
But it does happen.
The worst stuff would be early on. As it was later on, when it was later on stuff, then I would get more frustrated with it, because I was like, this is pissing me off so much that I can't drive this right now, and I don't know why it's happening.
Well, what's great is, welcome to the first episode of I.P.A. Sessions, where Lexi has driven everything. Like she said, she's off the hip. I wrote my questions down, and before I could even really get into them, she was able to go through and answer everything for me. It's like you still know how to read me, and I absolutely love that. This was a great conversation I got to have with you, and I just want to ask you one last question about...
Did I even answer the last question that you asked?
I think you did. I feel that you did, because I feel like the thing that you learned is what we learned together, which is how to be a host. And I feel like that is something that you learned in the moment, because like you were just expressing, you know what you are, you know how to drive and steer a show. And that's something that you learned in that moment, and you accepted what you're good at and you went with that.
I mean, I have a background in acting, so it's not like, I'm not trying to like pump myself up, but like I do have a background in this. Like I did Rocky Horror for 5 years in Vegas, performed on the main stage at Fright Dome, 2 years of doing that. I introduced people at Fright Dome on the main stage. I've been doing theater since I was single digits.
You have a great stage presence or mic presence. Yeah.
I did voiceover work when I was a little kid for TV shows in Canada. Like I've done a lot of acting, and it's been a big part of my life. And I think that the other side of it too is that acting carries through to how I function in society, because I don't really play myself in the real world.
Well, what's great is I don't think that you just answered the last question. I feel like you kind of answered my next question, which is going to be my final question, would be, is there anything that you would say to anyone that's looking to do what you do, anyone that's looking to host? And I feel like you answered that.
Don't go to fucking film school.
Hey, I agree with you on that one. Unless you want to be a cameraman, don't do film school.
It's genuinely not a joke. If you're listening to this and you're someone who's looking at going to film school, save your fucking money. Honest to God. The biggest waste of time and money that I have spent in my life is going to film school, because the end result is that I went to film school when I was 20. I started there. I got my associate's degree in film and television. Then I spent like from 2005 until like 2008 doing nothing, not working in film, not anything. And everybody's like, you got to go out to California, you got to go out to California, you got to go out to California. But I didn't go out to California. I went back to Nova Scotia where I was like more stable. And I went back to, other states where I was more stable. And then I got in relationships, and the relationships, they would direct me to a different state and all this stuff. If you want to work in the film industry, it is so bullshit to say this, but it is the honest to God, full on truth. You got a fucking car? It's going to be your house, bud. Get the fuck to California. Find a studio to sleep outside of. Start going to clubs every fucking night. Find people who are in those clubs who you can hook up with, who will give you a fucking in. That is the way into the film industry.
Studio film industry.
There is no school for film. There is no place to go to get you in the door that is not you physically meeting someone. Because the most successful people in film have all just hung out with the right people. All the people who have had jobs that I should have been qualified to get got them because they hung out with the right people. I lived in Nova Scotia. I couldn't get a job with the Trailer Park Boys to save my life. But everybody around me was working with the Trailer Park Boys because they all knew some friend of theirs, because that was a local show that was run by a bunch of friends. Most film productions bring their friends on to work on them, or people who they're used to working with. You've got to make friends. This whole entire industry is built around making friends and knowing things. And at this juncture, at 40 years old, I now feel that I have enough friends and connections in California that I am going to try to go out there in September. But I did not take the right path to this. And if I had just gone to California in my 20s, I'd be somewhere. But now I've got to go and start the game way too late into life. And who knows where that's going to go for me. But I'm not going to give up on it. Because at the end of the day, as I said, I need to find a way to leave my imprint somewhere. Yeah. And there are enough people that want to work with me that even if I work on independent films and things like that, it still gives me what I need. And there are so many independent filmmakers out there who will work with you. And you don't know where those are going to go. You could either have a Sam Raimi, or you could have a fucking dude who made a video that you'll never see in the store. You don't know where that's going to go.
Yeah.
So never say no to an independent film unless the following words come out of their mouth: trade for portfolio. The second they say trade for portfolio and they're not your fucking friend, walk out that door, because you are worth more than that. Yeah. And your work is worth more than that. And you deserve compensation for your work. Don't ever let anybody come in and tell you otherwise. Don't let anybody ever rip you off, because it's fucking bullshit to have someone tell you trade for portfolio when you know that you're spending hundreds of dollars out of your pocket to make these things happen for their fucking films that don't even go anywhere. Either be compensated or be working with the right people who you know and you're okay with giving your time and energy to. Don't work for people you don't know, who are not going to help you.
And look, that's why, this is a podcast. It's a platform that I want to make for independent artists out there. And that's exactly why. It's one of the many reasons why I want to do this show, is to help promote you guys, to help put the artists out there. And I do work within the studio industry, but I love the independent industry as well. And there is a very true saying within the studio film industry world, and that is, it's all about who you know, not what you know.
Yeah, it's entirely what it is. It's all about who you know, not what you know.
And speaking of who we know, Lexi, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for being on my christening of this, the first ever episode.
Did you not want me to promote my bad art and my short story?
Oh, I am not done. I just wanted to thank you first. I want to make sure that I got to thank you properly for talking about yourself, which is something you don't enjoy doing, but clearly you're very good at. Please tell us more about where we can find ways to listen to your show, where we can find ways to connect with you if anyone wants to reach out and talk to you about movies, any art projects, things like that. Now is the time. Please plug yourself and everything about you.
I do Cinema d'Amore. That's on all your basic Apple, Spotify. I know Podbean is one that they promote all the time. So, I mean, we're on basically any of your podcast listening platforms. You can find us on there. We release every Friday, which is different for me because we used to come out every Monday. And it's a film specific podcast. And then of course you can go back and listen to 3Dmers. 3Dmers have, about 70 episodes or so of our stuff. It's all still up. It's all still available. Same thing. All the same listening platforms. Spotify, Apple, Podbean. I know it's on all that stuff. So go ahead and listen to that. You'll find 2 different places to listen to me. I think I'm a little bit more interesting to listen to in some ways on 3Dmers, but I think that as time goes on, I'll be more interesting on Cinema d'Amore because I just keep saying weirder shit on there. I do bad art. If you want to look at my bad art, Iconoclast, ICONOKLAST on Instagram. You can also message me on there if you're interested in working with me. My other Instagram is Poly, POLY _ EYSTER, polyester. That is my transgender account. I promote all myself on there. It's all my photos, and I talk about myself and what I'm doing and what I'm recording. So if you're interested in following me as a person, that's where you go for that. And you can watch my hair change color like every other picture. And what else do I have? I started working on a book of short stories.
Nice.
There's nowhere for you to find that right now. But you read my first story.
I did. When you have something and you're ready to push it, I have a platform for you. I'm absolutely happy to have you back on anytime. Anytime you got something new.
I'm getting shockingly good feedback on my story. I wasn't expecting that because it's the first time I've ever actually written anything, even though everybody's been telling me for all my life to write. So it's a big deal that I started writing. But I got compared to, what's that guy? Chuck Palahniuk? Two different people now have compared my work to that, and I'm like, well then, that's like the greatest compliment I could think of getting as a writer. So he's great. Yeah. He's a really great writer.
Fight Club, right?
Yeah, Fight Club, Choke.
Yeah.
He grounds his stuff in reality. I tend to, even though I have the background in horror and like sci-fi and that kind of stuff, and that tends to be a lot of what I like. I don't like things that aren't grounded in reality too much, unless you can find some way to make it work. So a lot of my short stories are all just stories without happy endings, all set in reality. So my book's going to be called Short Stories to Ruin Your Day.
Oh, I like it already. Well, Lexi, thank you so much. As always, appreciate having you here, and thank you for being a part of the first episode. And I can't wait to see where this goes and where you are the next time you come on.
We'll probably go back to doing not 3Dmers. If we go back to it, we'll call it Oops, They Did It Again.
I like it. I'm here for it. You heard it here first, guys.
You should come back if we do.
Absolutely.
I don't know if it'll work without you, but I'm gonna think and process it. So.
Well, we're getting better and better at what we do. Thank you for tuning in to I.P.A. Sessions. I hope you found some inspiration today for practical applications within the entertainment medium. For any of you fellow future podcasters out there, I hope this helps. And tune in next week as we have Justin Morgan of Cinema d'Amore joining us to tell us a little bit more of the editing and the breakdown process behind Cinema d'Amore, giving us his take on hosting and how he does it and what it's like to work with this crazy chick, Lexi. So thank you everyone for listening. Until next time, stay golden.